In a quiet Kentucky town, life seemed peaceful, at least on the surface. But the people there hadn't forgotten the terror that once gripped their streets. For 10 years, a man known as the Clovehitch Killer had haunted their town. 13 people lost their lives to him before he abruptly vanished. No one understood why. Maybe he died. Maybe he simply disappeared. Whatever the reason, 10 long years had passed since his last kill, and in that time, the town tried to heal. Each year, they gathered for a memorial to honor the victim. Among those who always attended are the Burnside family, Don, the local scoutmaster, his kind wife, Cindy, their young daughter, Susie, and their 16-year-old son, Tyler. Tyler was a good kid, eager to make something of himself, but couldn't attend the required leadership camp because money was tight. One night, his phone buzzed with a message from a girl he'd secretly liked for months for a meetup. That text alone was enough to get his heart racing, so while everyone was asleep, he quietly took his father's truck keys and slipped out of the house to meet her, completely unaware that this single decision would change his life forever. When he met her, everything felt light. They laughed, talked, and soon enough, things began to heat up. But just as the show was about to go down, she saw a photo lying on the floor of the truck, and what she saw made her freeze. It was a picture of a woman tied up, as though she was partaking in some weird ritual. That, of course, didn't sit well with his crush, who abruptly ended their meeting. The damage had already been done, and he was about to be faced with real consequences. By the next morning, the whole town had heard about it, but what bothered Tyler most wasn't the shame, it was the photo itself. Why was something like that in his dad's truck? Could it have been a mix-up? As much as he wanted to believe it was a mix-up, deep down, something didn't feel right. So he started watching his father's every move just in search of a clue. Meanwhile, his peers kept their distance until that year's memorial service, and despite his efforts to clear his name, he was unsuccessful and got frustrated with how rumors could travel fast. It was in that state that a certain reporter, Cassie, who had a reputation for reporting sad news, approached him, and after a brief, uncomfortable verbal exchange with her, he walked away. Still, he couldn't shake off the feeling that his father was not who he claimed he was. Later that day, curiosity took hold of him, so he waited for everyone to step out, then snuck into his dad's cabin, the very one his father always spent most of his free time. At first glance, the inside of the cabin looked like a regular workshop with work tools neatly arranged on every side. But as he looked closer, he saw a patch on the wooden floor that seemed like an opening to something. Curious, he got on his knee, pulled off the covering, and voila. Sitting there was a box labeled Outwoods that contained adult magazines. Surprising, but what caught his attention was that some pictures had been carefully cut out, just like the one he had seen in the car the other night. And beneath the magazine was a Polaroid photo of a woman lying on a bed covered in white sheets, tied up and gagged. Then written in pen at the bottom were the words, Nora, Lucky's favorite. Just like the picture he had seen in the truck. With his mind racing, he placed everything back the way he found it. For a 16-year-old, this was too much to handle. But who was Nora? And why did his father have that photo? This latest discovery had put him in a state of dilemma so much that after everyone had gone to bed, Tyler hopped on his father's computer in search of any information about a certain Nora who might have been a victim of the Clovehitch Killer. Before he could find anything, his mom walked in on him, so he put a pause on his investigation for that night. The next morning, his father called him to the shed for a talk, which Tyler honored, unsure of what to expect. However, his father suddenly shifted to giving him the talk. After a harmless start about growing up, he rambled about temptation and control, a talk that felt more like a warning than advice. Left with no other option, he reached out to Cassie, the reporter. She had been following the Clovehitch story for years, and he hoped she might know something he didn't. At their first real meeting, she handed him a book written by a woman who had once worked with the police on the case. Along with the book was a small box filled with old evidence, which included photographs of another victim and a picture of another victim's necklace found near a church she had never attended. How the killer followed the same pattern, used the same type of ropes. Then she went on to explain the same entry point, left the Clovehitch at every scene. In her words, I don't think he ever stopped killing. I think there are more than 10 victims. That line hit him hard, and from that moment, Tyler knew he had to find out the truth, no matter what it would cost him. So he came up with a plan. He lied to his parents that he wanted to start volunteering to tutor at a local shelter in town. What he didn't know was that his father had started watching him closely, already suspecting that Tyler might be onto something. To keep things looking normal, Tyler invited the reporter over for dinner, pretending she was his girlfriend. The plan worked. At dinner, she played along, smiled politely, slipped subtle questions into conversations, hoping to get a sense of who Don Burnside really was, but was careful not to blow her cover. By this time, Tyler's gut was screaming. Something about his father felt off, and on their way to drop her off at her place that night, he spilled the beans about the strange journals he'd found in the cabin, especially the photo with the words, Lucky's favorite, written on it. The reporter laughed it off, trying to calm the tension, but a few hours later she showed up at his window looking really shaken. According to her, after she got home, she couldn't stop thinking about the name Lucky. Something about it wouldn't leave her head, so she pulled out old police records and started digging, only to find that the 5th Clovehitch victim, a week before her murder, had received a letter that read, "Lucky's favorite." With this new piece of evidence, Tyler and the reporter rushed back to the cabin to retrieve the box, but it was gone, and in its place was a large blueprint with a detailed layout of what appeared to be someone's house. Every room was marked, with specific points of entry and sketches showing exactly how something, probably the next murder, might be carried out. By the next morning, Tyler's nerves were on edge. Something in his gut told him there was more. So, while walking near the side of the house, he noticed a crawl space he hadn't paid much attention to before. Crawled in, only to discover a room, what looked like a torture chamber, with a wig on the ground, a carton containing many more adult magazines, pictures, and a red wooden chest filled with jewelry, other items, and most disturbingly, 13 driver's licenses, all belonging to women, one of which was Nora Devlin. Unable to process what he just saw, Tyler was terrified and suddenly backed away. What he didn't know was that his father had been watching him the whole time. The next morning, his father took him camping, and after a long ride with a silence that stretched throughout the journey, they finally got to their destination. After they had settled, his father asked if Tyler had told anyone what he saw, which Tyler replied with a no. Satisfied with the response, he told Tyler that Uncle Rudy was the one behind everything, and that he, his father, was only trying to protect the family. He said it gently, like he was letting his son in on a secret, and by the time the conversation ended, Tyler wasn't sure what to believe anymore. That night, they burned everything: the photos, the blueprints, the journals, the driver's licenses, the red box, every last piece. A few days later, Tyler received a sorry note on his window while preparing to leave for the leadership camp. That same day, his father sent his mother and sister to stay with their grandmother for a few weeks. With the house empty and the coast clear, he set his plans in motion. First, he went shopping at the supermarket that afternoon, where he met a woman in the aisle who would, unfortunately, become his next victim. He trailed her to her house, stayed a little to confirm it was really hers, then drove home. Once home, he dashed for the storage unit, opened it, and pulled out his camera from where he had stored it. It had been a long time since he touched it. That familiar feeling came rushing back as old habits were about to resurface. He then quickly changed into a mask with makeup, a wig similar to the one in the crawl space, burgundy robe, heels with his legs tied loosely by a rope, and started taking a few disturbing pictures in some weird poses. Suddenly, there was a sharp, unexpected knock at the door, which made him freeze, hurriedly change into his clothes, and rush to answer the door. To his surprise, the august visitor was Cassie, who came pretending to be looking for Tyler. They had a brief, awkward interaction, during which he even took a picture of her, and as if on cue, a call came through her phone, and she left. When she was gone, he drove straight to the woman's house from the supermarket. Dressed like a workman, he knocked, confirmed that she wasn't home, then went around to the back where he used a screwdriver to make an unsuspicious opening in her crawl space, tied a neat clove-hitch knot around a pipe, and walked away. The next morning, he was in church, listening to a sermon about redemption. Then he went home, where he neatly laid out duct tapes, a pair of gloves, his camera, a pistol, a mask, ropes of different sizes and types, a black neatly folded cloth, a white polythene, what looks like a first aid box, and a black travel bag on the bed. With everything set, he made his way to the woman's house and crawled in through the laundry room window. The woman he'd followed was asleep on the couch, with the TV still on. He watched her. Then he turned the TV off. She suddenly woke up and froze when she saw him. He told her he was a bank robber who needed her car to get away, and she believed him. Took her keys, her license, and even took a picture of her. And he said she needed to be tied up, just so she wouldn't call the police. Terrified, she agreed, but as he was tying her hands, he leaned closer, and, in a strangely calm voice, said, "Lucky likes your shampoo." It took her a second to understand, but before she would react, he had a rope around her neck, ready to strangle her. A struggle ensued, but he managed to pin her down, cover her face with plastic, took a picture of her, and was examining the printout when he got called on by Tyler, who by this time was already in the doorway. Startled, he turned to see Tyler, who should be in leadership camp, aiming his service gun at him. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then his father tried to speak, and calmly, like he always did, tried to twist the truth again. But here's the interesting twist no one saw coming. Remember that sorry note Tyler found on his window the morning he was to leave for leadership camp? Turns out, it wasn't just a random apology, and he only realized that when he met Cassie outside of Nora's house. At first, he didn't even want to go in, but after some persuasion, he gave in, and that's when she described in haunting detail how Clovehitch had broken in, tied, tortured, and killed Nora in that room. Still, Tyler refused to believe it. The image of his calm, devoted father just didn't fit that description. Then she dropped the real bombshell. Her mother had also been one of Clovehitch's victims. When she mentioned her name, Tyler froze because he'd seen her driver's license amongst the ones in his father's crawl space. Suddenly, everything made sense, and instead of going camping, he decided to stay back to solve this case with Cassie. Together, they followed Don to the supermarket parking lot where they noticed how he watched his next target. There was enough proof for them, but they had to act fast, so they found a way to sneak Tyler into the house to install a tracker on his father's phone, which happened to be the same day Don was taking those disturbing self-portraits. That explains why she suddenly showed up at his house. If she hadn't, their plan would have faltered. The tracker led them to the new victim's house, where Cassie saw him tie the Clovehitch knot on the pipe. That confirmed their worst fears. The next day, they went to confront him, but instead of Don, they found pieces of ropes scattered on the bed. That was enough to send them racing to the woman's house, which led to the scene where Tyler confronted his dad. Seeing that Don had almost succeeded in manipulating Tyler, Cassie intervened and made for the pistol on the table, but Don attacked her, slamming her head against the wall. Then he turned to Tyler, got the gun from him, aimed, and was ready to fire. Then a struggle broke out, and in that debacle, Cassie regained her strength just in time, and using a headlamp, took him out with 2 hits to the head. They didn't hand him over to the police. Instead, they took his body to the forest and made his murder look like a suicide. To the world and his wife, Don Burnside was a broken man who took his own life. But to Tyler and his girlfriend, justice had finally been served. Days later, a funeral was held where Tyler gave a heartfelt tribute with a trembling voice. The Clovehitch terror had finally ended. For Kentucky, it was peace after years of fear. And for Tyler, his girlfriend, his mother, and his sister, it was the start of a new chapter. If this story left you thinking and unsettled, consider smashing the subscribe button for more gripping movie recaps.